What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back. It is season 3 of Around the VLA. Thanks very much for tuning in. My name is Rob St. Clair, live from Chicago. That is the VLA Director of Operations, Vince Zanzuki, live from Phoenix, Arizona. Vince, we are back. We are in season 3 of this very program, and we're ramping things back up here all around VLA media, VLA YouTube, all that in preparation for the 2023 season. So we've got a lot to catch up on, but it's great to be back with the show. Good to see you, buddy. What's going on over there?
No, not too much. Just like you said, just cracking through this season or off season, I should say, and getting things prepared for the 2023 season. It's been a lot of moving parts, but very exciting and definitely ready to get it going.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff going on. The season starts just about exactly 2 months from right now. The Central Division kicks things off in Indiana, and then we'll be full steam ahead from there. But we've got a lot to catch up on, so this won't be the full in-depth season preview. We'll have another episode on that sometime in the month of December. But there is a decent amount to catch up on. We'll whip around Tier 2, see what happened in the off season, and I think a great place to start, Vince, is speaking of Tier 2 and speaking of promotion and points and earning points and moving up and all those things that we're going to talk about. There was, for the first time since we've kind of installed this Tier 2 cumulative point promotion system, this offseason we had a team get promoted. It was none other than Chicago Swede. We talked about it earlier in the summer in June after Swede won the Tier 2 championship. They reached exactly 50 cumulative points, which was exactly the target, right on the number in the Central Division. Swede was offered promotion. They accepted, and they will play in the Central Division of Tier 1 with the Chicago Icemen and the Indiana Team Pineapple this year. So we got to give Swede a huge shout out. They're the perfect example of when we put this system in place where you can earn points and win tournaments year over year, accumulate those things, eventually get to a certain point where you get promoted. Swede has done that. They've proved our model, and they're going to take a crack at Tier 1 this year.
Yeah, and I have to say that I actually go look way back in the archives of the VLA or around the VLA. I actually did predict that Swede would get the Tier 1 promotion last year. I thought that they did have the opportunity to do it with them as motivated as they were playing the events that they were, and obviously the team that they are. I thought that they would have the opportunity to do it, and they did. Amazing Tier 2 championship run, winning the championship, but then also getting the 12 points that they needed to get the promotion. I mean, maybe it was 10 points. 10
Yeah,
points.
I think it was 12.
Was it 12?
I
12,
think they
12 that they
I think
needed?
they
Yeah,
had to win four
they,
matches. Yeah, because they had to win that championship match. Not only did they have to win it to win the tournament, but they needed 3 points to get promoted. I think they hit it. They definitely hit it exactly on the
yeah.
number. I thought it was
And
12. Crazy.
yeah, fantastic event for them. That they came through, won that championship. And it's exciting to see them also win the championship to get the promotion as well. It would have been one thing, yeah, if they took it to 5 and earned 1 point to get in or something like that, and it's like, but they actually they took the championship, they took the finals to win it. So I mean, shout out to Swede. Really excited to see them in Tier 1 this year. They're going to do a lot of great things. We're going to talk about them and playing in their the Tier 2 tournaments already. They're looking really solid, so they're going to be a force this year. And so tier 1 teams need to be on notice already for what Swede's going to be bringing this year.
Yeah, we'll talk a lot about this Central Division because it is those 3 Central Division teams that'll kick us off in Fort Wayne the third weekend of January. Exactly the same as last year, but last year Swede was playing up as a Tier 2 team in that event. Now they're a regular member of Tier 1, and they've every match is crucially important for them going forward. So shout outs to Swede. Congratulations to them on their promotion. Jordan Smith and the guys really deserve it, and I can't wait to see what they do this year. The East Division is totally unchanged. We've still got Team LVC out of upstate New York, the Boston Bounce, and the Northeast Force out of Connecticut. No change there. Team LVC, the reigning Tier 1 champions, will look to defend their title this year. There is, however, some movement in the West Division, Vince. Your division, as Your Phoenix Ascension guys only have one immediate Tier 1 rival this year in the SoCal Rising Tide. Can you talk us through the movement in the West Division?
Yeah, first give the shout out to Rising Tide for winning the West Division championship last year, and doing a solid job. Finishing up. I mean, even though we finished fifth and sixth in the tier 1 championship tournament, I think Rising Tide really put together a formidable season last year, and was able to do a good job. As far as what has happened with the former team Sport Connects. They have gone through a rebrand, which, in all honesty, is going to be something a little bit of the norm. I think with VLA teams, it's going to happen more and more as management changes, goals change within the organizations, things like that. And so they actually, for the primary group of that team, is now the Bay Area Dimes, which they have been relegated to Tier 2, and now they'll pretty much start over at this point. But yeah, so Sport Connects wasn't able to finish their season last year, financial issues, roster issues, things like that, and so they were not able to complete a Tier 1 season. They were forced to rebrand within themselves, and they're just basically going to be starting over. And another team that's going to be dangerous coming out of Tier 2 is the Bay Area Dimes. They're going to be a fantastic Tier 2 team moving into the season.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. You made a lot of good points. So Sport Connects, the Bay Area team that played in Tier 1 for most of last season, they underwent a change in ownership and a total rebrand. And the way that the VLA handled that was that they're now entering Tier 2 as a brand new team. So you'll see a lot of the same faces. Ryan Bridge is largely in charge of running the show, but it is a newly branded team, and they're starting fresh with 0 cumulative points in Tier 2. So that's the situation with the team formerly known as Sport Connects, now the Bay Area Dimes, who we'll talk about a little bit later on in the show. But that's the reason for that there are only 2 teams in the West Division of Tier 1 this year. And the way that those regular season events are going to work is exactly how the Central Division worked last year. So last year, the Central Division only had 2 teams with Icemen and Team Pineapple. And those regular season events, the VLA called up a team out of Tier 2 in that division to be the 3rd team in those regular season events. So Swede got to play one. Milwaukee Dive got to play one last year. The exact same thing will happen in the West Division this year. So there will be 2 regular season events. Each will have a different West Tier 2 team to complete that weekend. So we'll talk about that more as we get a little bit closer to the season. But those are your 8 teams. One of those 8 teams will be named Tier 1 champions in June, July, whenever that tournament ends up going down. But that's it. This is the top division of the VLA for this year, and we are really, really excited about it.
Yeah, it's going to be a very strong Tier 1. I think probably our strongest yet. Definitely teams are starting to get comfortable with how we are running our format. Last year was our initial year. Essentially, I mean, it was the first complete season that we've had Tier 1 and Tier 2. So it was definitely a lot of trials going into the full season in 2022, which I mean shows where Sport Connects kind of ended up with not being able to complete the season. I think that the teams that are here are used to playing a full season now, and it's going to. We know how to prepare for it a little bit better than we did prior to this previous season. So I think that we're going to have a lot better success. I feel like Tier 1 definitely could have done better in a lot of the different events. We still haven't won a cup event yet. None of the teams have won a cup event yet. I'm sure that's something we're going to talk about. I think that we're going to prepare a little bit better. We're going to be a little bit more well-manned as far as utilizing the roster space that we have. But I think that the teams are going to come back stronger coming into 2023.
Yeah, I think so too. It is. We talk all the time on this show the last couple seasons, and as the VLAs continue to evolve the format, the succeeding in this league is a learning curve. And there's a lot that your organization has to figure out about how to compete consistently at whatever level you happen to be at, tier 1, tier 2, whatever. And with this season now being formatted very similarly to last year's, the teams going in are going to have a lot better of an idea what it takes to succeed. And I think that's going to produce higher level volleyball all around. So I'm really excited for that. Anything else about this group of tier 1 teams before we move on to a handful of other business around the league?
No, I mean it's one of those things where right now we're just kind of diving into some of the basics for it. Where we've got our full season schedule is actually completely up to date. If you check out the VLA website and check out the schedule link, we actually have all of our events, tier 1 events, other than our championships, up on that page. So you can go and check and see when your favorite tier 1 team will be competing this season.
And you'll have great opportunities to watch them here on the YouTube channel or check them out in person at various events all around the country. So, yeah, check out the website for all that. We'll go over the schedule in more detail on this show in a couple weeks. So, Vince, we mentioned that Swede earned promotion to Tier 1 from Tier 2 in the offseason. They got to exactly that 50-point threshold that they needed to get to coming out of the Central Division. Let's talk a little bit more about those promotion targets. So, because Swede in the Central Division achieved promotion. They got 50 points. They got offered promotion. They accepted to tier 1. Now, the Central Division being fully populated for now with 3 teams, those promotion targets adjust. So now, if you're a Central Division team, you need 100 cumulative points or 3 cumulative VLA Cup Series tournament wins to get promoted into the Tier 1 Central Division. And the exact same goes for the East Division. Both those tier 1 divisions have 3 teams. So right now it's a little more difficult, or it takes a little bit longer to get promoted to tier 1 in those 2 regions. Right now, the closest team we have by far is the Milwaukee Dive, who's at 49 points in the Central. So it wouldn't be that crazy for them to get promoted after this coming season. We'll have to see how close they can get with that. A couple teams in the East. I mean, River City Flow's got 36 points out of the 100 that they need. Cleveland's got 29 points, but they already have 1 cup win, so maybe they can get promoted that way. But the targets for the Central and the East, a little bit more difficult to get to right now because those divisions are more fully populated at the tier 1 level. Now, the West Division is a different story because of the situation with Sport Connects. They're changed in ownership and them starting from the bottom with 0 points in Tier 2 as the Bay Area Dimes. Now, with only 2 teams in the West Division of Tier 1, the promotional targets for that division are pretty easy, relatively. 50 points is all you need, or 2 VLA Cup Series tournament wins. It's exactly the same as the Central was last year. Ooh, wait a minute. We have I think we might have a broadcast issue. Let me figure this out. All right. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. Weird little broadcast issue, but we should be back. Good time to let you know that if you're watching, get active in the YouTube live chat. We're looking at the chat. Haven't seen anybody post anything in there yet, but if you have any questions or just are a fan of a certain team or whatever, if you just want to chirp Vince for the old school Ascension polo that he's wearing or whatever you want to do, get active in the YouTube live chat. We can see your comments and questions. So thanks for watching. I think everything's back to working now. So what I was saying, Vince, I don't know exactly where this thing got cut off, but the promotion targets by division, the one that's really the outlier here is the West Division. It now takes only 50 points cumulatively or 2 VLA Cup Series tournament wins for a Tier 2 team in the West to get offered promotion to Tier 1. And that's going to really be a storyline this season because just the number of teams in Tier 2 in the Western Division has exploded. It's going to be a very interesting race.
Yeah, definitely going to be an interesting race. There's definitely a handful of teams that recognize this target and are going for it. And it's really exciting to see because a few teams we don't really know a whole lot about. Obviously, we'll get into the names of the teams and kind of a breakdown of tier 2 teams and whatnot that are entering into the league this year. But I mean, this is something that just like last year in the Central, it was kind of a cutthroat race. I mean, it ended up being a race between two teams at the end, but it started off with the 630 Slunkers, who have rebranded. They were in contention early. Sweed obviously got the jump start on everything with playing the 2021 VLA Cup, so they had a handful of points to start off with, and then dive. The Central Division was really a grind early on, and it was really exciting to see those teams kind of leapfrog each other as they went up to up fighting for those last points. I'm hoping that we have a very similar race here in the West, and we see some of the teams that are going to grind for those 50 points. The other thing too is, I mean, you have a handful of teams that have actually played a full season already that have a handful of points, and then on top of it, we have our newly opened up tier 2 format where teams can go and play tournaments and matches almost weekly and earn points. It's going to be exciting to see how teams kind of put things together to schedule their own matches and whatnot, and try to build those points up to get to that 50-point threshold.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about the exact thing you mentioned, the ability of any team in Tier 2 to create their own volleyball, play it, get it approved by the VLA, and have it be worth points. That's been going on all summer and all since the season ended back in June. There's been volleyball happening in the background, so we'll talk about that in a minute. But let's jump into the Tier 2 West Division. Let's take a look at the teams. So these are all the teams right now that are officially entered into the database in the West Division that either have points or have confirmed their planned participation in the 2023 season. There's 12 teams. It's unbelievable. There's 12 teams in the Tier 2 West Division alone. And we've got 4 brand new ones that are in red there, so we can run them down. I mean, we all know kind of by now about Ruckus and Emiola in the same network. Basically any tournament they enter, they're likely to win a VLA Cup Series tournament. So I don't expect anything different from them this coming year. But I think the West Coast Brigade definitely deserves a look. Of the teams who really have engineered their builds around achieving promotion to Tier 1, especially in the West Division, they have a head start. They've already got 13 points in the database right now, including a couple that they picked up in exhibition earlier this summer. So they are on the inside track, I'd say. If they really manage their roster the right way this season, you could easily see them playing Tier 1 in 2024.
Yeah, and that's a big thing about West Coast Brigade is they play. They're the one team that played a full season last year. Right. They didn't quite. They had kind of a hiccup in both the VLA Cup and the East Division Cup, where they didn't gather a whole lot of points because they started off really hot, and they kind of fizzled out near the end of the season, and so that made it so they didn't qualify for Tier 2 championships. However, they have the understanding where I feel like a bunch of the other West Division teams don't, of what it takes to kind of get those points and progress in the rankings. And so just having that year experience, like we talked about, like you just mentioned, even the Tier 1 teams are kind of going through that learning curve. West Coast Brigade already did that. And right. So I think that they kind of understand what they need to do to get to that threshold a little bit better than a lot of these other teams, where I feel like a lot of the other teams are just kind of getting started out. They're going to play some matches here and there. They're going to play some tournaments, but they're not to the point where West Coast Brigade is ready to rock and roll and get this stuff done.
Yeah, I'm fascinated to see how they roll into the first couple tournaments of the year, like what Jacob Martinez and company have done to build the consistency of their roster and how they structure everything in the offseason. Because from kind of my perception, really just from the outside, they look like they're ready to go. It seems to me like they're ready to go this season, and they're gunning to play Tier 1 in 2024. So curious to see those guys. We've got a couple teams that also have carryover points from the past couple seasons, including the NorCal Tall ones. Donnie Hui's guys, Coach Donnie, who's sort of a YouTube celebrity. He's got a team in the VLA. They played a couple tournaments last year. They have Let's see, they have 7 points in the database that they could grab from a handful of events. They're always a fan favorite. The Phoenix Valor, the only reason I don't have them labeled as a brand new team is because they already have points. The Phoenix Valor, led by Micah Steiner, former Ascension guy that Vince knows really well. He's put a team together in the Phoenix area, and they're have already played a handful of exhibitions against Vince's guys in and around Arizona this offseason. So they've got a couple points in the database. So does Utah Mountain High, a team that played some exhibitions a year ago. The Seattle Riptide played West Division Cup last year. They've got some points in the database. And then Team IX, a team out of Chandler, Arizona that Vince also knows really well. They've also got points in the database. So there's all sorts of teams now in the West that at least have a little bit of prior experience with the VLA coming into 2023.
Yeah, one of the things that's happening in the West right now, and it's happening across the league, is that there are teams that are starting to recognize, hey, we need to get some matches in. And Seattle Riptides is a big one. They're starting to host VLA events up in their area, and that goes a long way with being able to accumulate points. And so some of these teams are starting to kind of understand what it takes to move up the rankings and play those matches. And there's just a lot of energy and synergy amongst all the teams that is creating these opportunities to play. And you're going to see it more and more, where I have a feeling by the start of we have a lot of things coming up, even in just starting to December, but I think January, you're going to see pretty much tier 2 and tier 1 matches every single weekend. And it pretty much starts with that race to, okay, in West, who's going to get to 50 first? And then it's going to become in Central and in the East divisions, where our VLA Cups, the West Division, Central Division, we're limited on space. I mean, there's 12 teams in the West Division alone. I mean, it's going to be one of those things where some teams may be on the outside looking in as far as points wise. Some of these new teams aren't going to get those opportunities to play in some of these cups like they did before, because the tournament space is limited. So you're going to start seeing a lot more matches in between, to where 1 point may get you maybe the difference between you playing a cup or not. So you're going to see a lot more teams starting to put these little exhibitions and little matches and little tournaments together that are going to help progress the league, but also progress these teams and their rankings. So I'm excited to see what develops as this goes on.
Yeah, me too. I think that's a great point. The autonomy that the VLA has given these tier 2 teams to produce their own volleyball and have it count for points is going to be a huge deal as teams start to figure out that system and how they can use it to try and get promoted. 4 teams that are brand new to the tier 2 West Division coming into 2023, at least that right now don't have any points in the database. The Dallas Dogs, new team. We finally get a team in Texas. I'm going to just get made fun of the entire year for commentating saying dogs the whole time. But actually a former teammate of yours, Vince, Daniel Jacobs, is the guy that played Ascension back in 2020 and has since moved to Texas, been playing some volleyball around there. He's one of the guys that's put this dogs team together. They've already got a pretty nice social media presence. I know they just got tryouts finished up, and they seem to have really already magnetized the Texas volleyball community into them, and I'm fascinated to see what Texas volleyball is going to be able to produce at the VLA level.
Yeah, they're going to be a great team, honestly. Following the Texas community and whatnot for a while, it was just a matter of time before we got a team involved with the VLA. Even better that it's Daniel Jacobs. I mean, great guy, former Ascension player. Actually, I pointed this out when they did the announcement about him. He was the very first match
MVP. I remember
of a VLA match. A fantastic match he played against Team Pineapple. But it's those types of guys that are understanding what our league is doing, and they want to be a part of it. And he is doing a great job bringing the Dallas community together. Hopefully, Dallas isn't the only Texas community that comes together and joins the VLA. Hopefully this is the start of possibly Houston or in Austin, Texas areas, and it grows from there. But we're very excited to have Texas involved with the VLA right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's about time. About time we got a Texas team in the league. Fascinated to see what they do. We already talked about the Bay Area Dimes, the a handful of the same crew that played as Sport Connects in Tier 1 last year, but they are starting from ground zero in terms of standings in Tier 2. But they've already had a pretty good offseason. They've attached themselves in branding and structure to the Bay to Bay Volleyball Club, one of the best junior boys clubs in the nation. Matt and Ariel Houlihan running the show out in the Bay Area, who I just love. Really happy to have their club associated with the VLA in some way. Beta Bay is just the best people. They really do it right. And the Dimes have already played a little bit of volleyball. They just played an exhibition. I think it was last weekend against Stanford, Menlo, and maybe Santa Cruz. Or they've got some good, some good relationships and some good prior volleyball. It's been played in the Bay Area in the past, and despite their kind of restructuring as an organization, that same crew of guys, Ryan Bridge, one of the guys really running the show in terms of roster management, they're already playing a lot of volleyball, and like you said, they already have VLA experience. So even though they don't have any points starting the 2023 season, I expect them to be pretty good right away.
Yeah, they're going to be a scary team right off the bat. I mean, they were scary in Tier 1 last year. They're really not a lot of guys changing from what I've understand from Ryan Bridge. But I think that they will have a little bit more of the flexibility of the Tier 2 format, which is kind of going to play into their hands. They're a team that you're not going to want to see as a Tier 1 team in the first round. Let's just say that. But they'll move up the rankings quickly, I have a feeling, and they're going to be a formidable team, and we're excited that they happy for them that they got the Bay to Bay partnership, and I'm excited to see what they do with it.
Yeah, me too. Speaking of teams attaching themselves to great junior boys clubs, we've got the San Diego Wave putting in a VLA team this year. Wave is a huge, huge junior club, both boys and girls down in San Diego. And as much as the VLA has had its footprint in Southern California, it's about time we had a proper San Diego team in the league. So I know Waves held tryouts. Noli Man is one of the guys running the show in terms of roster management over there. I'm really excited about the San Diego Wave because the organization alone that their club is attached to really commands a lot of respect.
Yeah, for one, I mean, San Diego is volleyball. I mean, let's be
Totally.
like that.
Totally.
And the fact that they've never had really any representation, whether it's been USAV Nationals or even PVL or any kind of thing like that, is really unfortunate for their community because again, San Diego is volleyball, and the fact that Wave has been the organization to join the VLA is just amazing for the league. Not only that, they are the host of the VLA West Division Cup, and they are just diving right into what we're trying to do for the VLA. And so it's really great to see a team like that and an organization like that understand what we're trying to do and want to be a part of that. And we're hoping more teams and more clubs throughout the country recognize, hey, this is what's going on over there, and we want to be a part of that too, and just help develop this what we're trying to do, the professional level volleyball, and bring it to the United States. And San Diego Wave, I have a feeling, just like Beta Bay, is going to be a huge integral part to bringing that to the country.
Yeah, it's a market that the VLA simply has to be in because, like you said, San Diego just is volleyball in this country, and we are so excited about Wave joining. I expect them to be pretty good, and I'm excited to be in their building out in February for that tournament, like you mentioned. Last but not least, for the West, the Utah Outlaws, another Utah team, this time coming out of Provo. I don't know anything about this team, Vince, but you should tell us at least a little bit because you're about to see them in a couple weeks in scrimmages in Arizona.
I'll tell you what, I know absolutely nothing about this team, but we're going to
Awesome.
find out right quick. In about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we are playing Ascension. Will be playing a match against them, and then there's a round robin between Valor, Team IX, and the Utah Outlaws. That's going to be of point value, which will be very important for all three teams going into the West Division Cup. To see where their seedings go. So it's going to be a good test for them to see where they kind of stand. obviously playing against the Tier 1 team, but then playing against two of the West Division Tier 2 teams. And it's going to be a good breakthrough for them to jump into the league. So, I'm excited to see them. See what Jeff Bueller and his crew is bringing to the VLA. But again, most importantly, bringing VLA to the Salt Lake City, Provo area community. Utah Mountain High hasn't played since 2021, so it's exciting to see a new group of guys coming together and representing the Utah area, which obviously with BYU being up there and UVU. Fantastic volleyball community, and so it's great that we're finally represented with a consistent team.
Yep, they will get their feet wet really quickly, playing in Arizona in just a couple weeks. So we'll talk about that later on in the show. That's it for the Tier 2 West Division. I say that's it. We talked about 12 teams just now. It's insane, just the level of talent that there is in the West Coast and the enthusiasm for VLA volleyball. So these teams will all be in action before you know it. Let's talk about the Tier 2 Central Division. A lot of familiar faces here and a couple new ones. Of course, we got the Milwaukee Dive. They had an incredibly impressive season last year. Second at Tier 2 championships, second at VLA Cup. Already 49 points in less than a year of existence is absolutely insane. So Chandler North and the boys are clearly the favorite right now to be the next team promoted in the Central. And they're just phenomenally well organized. They threw by far the biggest off-season VLA tournament that had the most points associated with it a couple weeks ago. We'll talk about that, but there isn't really much more to say about the Milwaukee Dive. It's only because they're so young that they're not in Tier 1 yet, because they really run themselves like a Tier 1 organization.
Yeah, obviously the second place team in the VLA Cup last year had a good shot to even win the cup. They're deadly. And they've just, if you look at the roster that they've been putting together and the players that they've got, they're top caliber across the country. They could win any tournament they play in. I have a feeling that they could do it this year if they want to. It's whether or not they are willing to play the maybe few extra things here or there is going to get them those extra points. It's really up to Chandler North to see if he wants to do that. But I understand where some teams are. Some teams are where they are still not quite sure of the financial and where they're standing as far as the commitment level to be Tier 1. But I have a feeling that Milwaukee Dive, their goal is definitely to be Tier 1. So I think that if they really want to, they're going to do it this year.
Yeah, I agree. They certainly have the roster. And that's a good point. It's important to bring up and remind people who might be new to kind of the Tier 2 VLA format. There's no obligation to push towards getting promoted to Tier 1. If you want to just play Tier 2 events and stay in Tier 2, that is great. We want that. We want the most number of teams to get opportunities to play as possible. And your organization, we want your organization to be able to use the VLA to do whatever you want to do, whether that's push, get promoted, or just play great volleyball and enjoy your time playing great tournaments. That is totally cool. And Tier 1 is a commitment. There's a financial commitment to that. There's a huge scheduling commitment to that. And teams, not only do they need to get there in terms of points, but they need to get there in terms of structure for them to be really ready to take that on. So it's important to bring that up. Another team going down the list here in the Central that is attached to a very good juniors club, the 630 Buddy Bears. This is a rebrand of the 630 Slunkers from past year. So same team, their points carry over. They've got 18 points in the Central. So second most out of any team in this division in Tier 2. Nick Mariyama is part of the 630 larger club organization. He does a great job with these guys. And they've already had tryouts. They've already played some tournaments. I expect them to be pretty good as well.
Yeah, they're gonna be solid. I mean, we know firsthand Ascension 0-1 against them. But but no, they're going to play every single event this year. They're a staple in the league, a staple in Tier 2 at the moment. I just feel like they haven't. It's been tough with you got teams like Swede and teams like Dive. If they're in the West, we'd be talking like they could be promoting this year. But at the same time, they're the Central, so they're playing behind a few teams. they got their work cut out for them to catch up to Dive, but at the same time, they're solid, and they're going to be a team that teams don't want to run into early. So they're going to have a great season. We're really excited to see what they bring to the table this year.
Yeah, 630's Junior Boys Club is one of the best in the country. It's like they've grown from, I mean, when I grew up in Chicago, when I played club 10 years ago, that club didn't exist. And now they're contending for national championships and producing like 8 or 10 Division I recruits every year. So that club is really on the rise, and I expect the same out of their VLA squad.
Absolutely.
Next up is the Madison Inferno. Madison, a huge volleyball pocket. I mean, University of Wisconsin women's volleyball in Madison won NCAA last year. So that's a big community. We love Inferno. They played last year. They've got 7 points right now in the database coming into the season. They've added a couple pieces this offseason, and they're going to jump right back into it. We'll see how much they travel. I expect them to stay maybe a little bit more regional, but a team that's fun to watch and has a lot of high energy. So shout out to the Inferno.
Yep, absolutely. They're a great squad up there, and we love the dedication that they have to the league.
Next up, VC Nebraska. Nebraska didn't play at all in the 2022 season, but they do have some carryover points from playing even a regular season event in 2021. So those don't go anywhere. Those points don't go anywhere, but we're curious to see if Nebraska puts a team back in, another junior club in the Lincoln, Nebraska area that's excellent. And then the last team in the Central that has points is the Midwest MAC. This is a rebrand of Micah, a team attached to a volleyball club in southern Michigan in Concord. Parker Science is an old buddy of mine. I lived in Michigan for a couple of years, so I know that volleyball community well. They do have a single point in the database from, I think it was a 5-set loss in Constellation of VLA Cup last year. So we'll see what Parker and those boys choose to do this year. I expect them to play a little bit regionally and get their feet wet and maybe play some scrimmages, but that's about it. I'm curious to see if any of my old buddies are going to play on that roster.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I've rumored that there's been a few possible exhibitions coming up, but nothing concrete yet. But they'll definitely be involved in a handful of the VLA Cups this year.
2 brand new teams in the Tier 2 Central Division. The first is Southside Extreme Performance, or Southside XP as they'll be called this year. A team from the south suburbs of Chicago in Mokina. They already played a little bit. They've already got they got a really good look, and that's like bright red novice gear. They played in the Milwaukee Dive preseason tournament. They're already getting active on Instagram, and they're attached to a junior club as well. So shout outs to those guys. And then last but not least, the Kentucky Unicorns. Shane Green, longtime Luau Chicago legend, has been living in Louisville for a couple of years and has kind of assembled that pocket of 3 or 4 states together and has made a team out of it. So you've got like Louisville, you've got Lexington an hour east of that, you've got Cincinnati, Ohio, just across the river from that. Got a couple Indiana kids as well. The Unicorn, the name is a reference to like a unicorn in bourbon. And speaking of bourbon, like in the Kentucky Whiskey Trail, is I guess a variety of bourbon that's impossible to get. It's so hard that it is deemed to be a unicorn. So I guess that's the origin of the team name. But shout outs to those guys. Louisville does have a little bit of a volleyball pocket, and Cincinnati has a much bigger volleyball pocket. And this team will kind of combine all those areas in the Midwest.
Yeah, no, they're coming in a good place. Shane Green, a little throwback. Him and I actually played together when we were on the Bring It USA tour in 2012. We were in Italy and Slovenia. We played together. Great guy, great personality.
Yeah, Shane's the man.
Yeah, absolutely. And you couldn't ask for a better person to be a representing team rep in the VLA. And he believes strongly in what we're trying to do, and we believe a lot in him and what he can do as far as organization and things like that. And so he's gonna do a lot for us, bringing that Kentucky community together and producing some good volleyball teams. I'm excited to have him involved with it, and that area right there with Ohio, and you obviously we'll get to the East Division teams. There's some good volleyball going to be right there, and it's some good teams that are going to be growing out of that little pocket right there with the Kentucky, Ohio, Indiana, and even Pennsylvania. It's exciting to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm fascinated to see what they do with jerseys and branding with the unicorn identity. I think that's going to be pretty fun.
Imagine what he's got.
Yeah, Shane will come up with something good. All right, let's look at the East Division. At the top of the list in the East Division is the Cleveland Kong. This is a rebrand of Team ECV, formerly Eastside Cleveland Volleyball Club. They won the East Division Cup last year. They've rebranded to the Cleveland Kong. I like their branding a lot. It's got like the King Kong gorilla and an homage. I mean, King Kong is a recognizable character, but of course, the one-handed Kong block, one of the most awesome moves in all of volleyball. So
Yep.
our beloved photographer Todd J has his hands all over that program in Cleveland. Kyle Mars, you'll recognize a lot of that team that won that East Division Cup last year, even though they'll look a little different in terms of branding.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting to see what they do this year. Obviously, they're very active. Him and Kyle Mars as well, being super active in the league, and they're trying to do everything they can to progress. They're playing as much as possible. They went out to Milwaukee, played in the dive tournament, grabbed a couple points there, and so they're doing the right things as far as, for one, exposure, for two, for building their foundation and playing as much volleyball as possible is what we're looking for. So they've proved that they can travel well and compete, and I'm excited to see what they do the rest of the year, as far as how they build on this tier 2 division race, East division race.
Because it will be a pretty good race. And I think their main competitor right now is the River City Flow. So Flow's got Kong on points right now, 36-29, but Kong does have that one cup tournament win. The River City Flow out of Richmond, Virginia, they're becoming really quickly a mainstay in the VLA since splitting off, having been Team LVC's second team in the past. They're now fully independent. That Virginia community, really underrated part of the country for volleyball. Sam Albus and those guys got all the way to Sunday at VLA Cup last year. They got to play on ESPN, and they've got a lot of points. And if they want to, I don't know if they can get promoted this year, but they're on the inside track. They've definitely got the talent in that community and in those networks of their roster to be a tier 1 caliber team.
Yeah, I feel like it would be a long shot for either of the East Division teams, any of the East Division teams at this point, to get that 100-point promotion. It is a substantial feat. I don't think that there's any amount of weekends that they can all throw together to play and completely dominate the way it would require. However, I mean, it's going to be a battle between Flo and Kong at this point. Flo does not quite play as often as Kong does, with their obligations, obviously, with Sam Alvis coaching at Lise McCrae, and being, kind of, actually, he has said that he won't be at possibly the first 2 events that they play in this year, which is a huge detriment to their team, him being literally arguably best opposites in the league. So,
Agreed.
I mean, if you're taking a guy like that away from your team, I mean, that's sacrificing a little bit there, but obviously, we got to make a dollar. We all got to make a living somehow, right? So shout out to Sam there. But it doesn't take anything from the team. The team is going to be a solid team. I just think that it gives Kong a chance, is basically where I'm going with this. And it's going to be a race of 2, possibly 3 years before one of these East Division teams grabs that next promotion.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I wouldn't expect one of them to get promoted this year, but maybe for the 2025 VLA regular season, I could see it. It's crazy that we can look out that far in the future. Right. Next up in the East, the New York Lost Travelers. This is a rebrand of the New York Pride. So Pride has existed for a couple years now. They played the VLA Cup in 2021 as well as 22. They've rebranded Terrence Crossan and those guys under new little sponsorship, and I expect that to help them have a little bit more resources. And in the past, that's been a team that has not been afraid to travel. They traveled all the way to the West Division Cup last year. I wouldn't be surprised to see them there again. I mean, they went West and Central Division Cups last year. So this is a rebrand of the New York Pride. They carry over Pride's points, so they've got 17 points in the database right now, and I'm just excited about this team. They've got a cool new brand identity too. Check them out on Instagram.
Yeah, I like what they've done. Terrence is doing a lot of great things over there, really trying to build up that team, keeping it local as well. From what
Yeah.
he did that first year, I think that he reached out to he got those Hawaii guys involved and whatnot, which was great. It was cool to see Gassman and La Rochelle over there playing and whatnot. But now that he's really centralized to keeping it to New York based guys, it's going to be a little bit better representation of their community, which is what we've been hoping for from the VLA from the start, is that these are communities coming together to build their teams. I think that they are playing the full season. They're going to be playing every single cup event. The issue with them is that they don't have a whole lot of teams that are relatively close to them, like to play any exhibition matches.
Yeah, they've got a couple tier ones, but that's not going to help them.
Yeah, exactly. Them going up and playing LVC or even Northeast Force really isn't going to do the trick. It takes a handful of tier two teams in a region to help grow that region a little bit better. And so that's going to be an unfortunate thing for them. But again, at the same time, looking at the East Division, I don't see any of them grinding so hard this year to where they're going to set themselves up to get the promotion. I think it's going to be it's going to be a 2 to 3 year deal. So, but I think that they're making the right moves to get in that situation to put them in play with where Flo and Kong are. So, I think that right now this is definitely a 3-team battle to get that East team division promotion.
Yeah, I agree. Next up is the Niagara Frontier, out of one of our favorite places for volleyball in the country, Western New York, West Seneca near Buffalo. They hosted the East Division Cup last year and got all the way to the semifinals. They played a little bit of scrimmages in the last month or two. In that area, they drove to Cleveland, played against Kong and Crimson. So Frontier's active. They only have 3 points in the database, but they've actually punched above their weight class a little bit in the events that they've played. So shout outs to those guys. And then speaking of the Columbus Crimson, a brand new team out of Columbus, Ohio, home of Ohio State. Obviously, they've won 3 national championships in the last 10 or so years. So obviously a huge pocket of volleyball there. They've split off a little bit of some of the guys that played for Cleveland, but have more of a Columbus background, are going to push forward this Columbus Crimson identity. And they grabbed a point in scrimmages in Cleveland earlier, about a month ago. So welcome them to the VLA. And another very important community we've got to have is Pittsburgh. We finally got a Pittsburgh team. The Steel City Surge are going to make their VLA debut in 2023. Nothing yet, but I know they've had tryouts, they've had practices, and I'm expecting some pretty good things out of the Pittsburgh volleyball community.
Yeah, pretty sure Steel City Surge is going to be playing in the River City Flow tournament, December, I think, 11th and 12th. So that will be their debut. But I mean, just an awesome area for volleyball. And
Totally.
You got Columbus, you got Pittsburgh, all right there. And I mean, the fact that this is coming together, it just seems so natural because I mean, those are great communities. I mean, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, obviously, with what Todd's doing up there, but Columbus, Ohio. I mean, Ohio State, one of the powerhouses in volleyball every single year. I mean, it just has to happen, you know.
Right.
So I mean, it's just it's exciting that they're here and finally kind of putting it together to where they can implement that into our league. And I'm excited to see what this race has to do or has, you know, the appeal that it has. And it's going to be a great East Division, and I'm excited for how things have developed there.
Yeah, I agree. So we've alluded several times to some of the events that have taken place in the 2022 offseason where some tier 2 teams have grabbed some points. And here they are. Here have been the opportunities so far that teams have put chances together to play and have gotten points from. And so I'll go down really quick. We've had a couple in Arizona. There was one back at the Volleyball Festival that you put together, Vince, where Brigade and Valor came out, got some points. There's one in Cleveland where Cleveland, Niagara, and Columbus came up. Cleveland and Columbus got some points. There's another round robin in Arizona where Phoenix Valor grabbed the point. We talked about the Milwaukee Dive tournament. That was a huge one. We had both Iceman and Swede go up there. Swede ended up winning the tournament. They beat Dive in the finals, and Dive got 5 points for being the highest finishing tier 2 team. And 5 points is a lot. Like that's That's more than you can get in one VLA Cup match. So that was a big deal. Cleveland and then 6-3-0 tied for fifth. They both got 2 points. Inferno and Southside XP were there as well. So that was a huge tournament. Really fun one a couple weeks ago. You mentioned the Seattle tournament where that the Riptide hosted. They won their own tournament. They got a point there. And then we talked about the couple that are coming up. We've got the one in Arizona in 2 weeks with Valor, Team IX, and the Utah Outlaws, and then some scrimmages with Vince's guys. And then the River City Rumble. River City Flow putting on a tournament in Virginia that it sounds like the Steel City Surge guys are going to be at. So all these opportunities that you can just, if you're a tier 2 team, you can just create and get teams there. And if the VLA approves it, you can earn points from these events. So Vince, tell us a little more generally about what opportunities there are for tier 2 teams to just create events like this and get points from them.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where, I mean, we put the information out there, but as far as the application of it, there's still that uncertainty, right? Where, and keep in mind, teams are not used to throwing their team together at the start of September. They're used to this starting in January, and then most teams are always preparing themselves for the USAV Nationals, which was a May deal, so you don't really even start that till March, right? So I think it's taken a little bit of time for it to take, but now that teams and team reps are starting to realize, hey, we can play matches right now. We just have to follow these handful of guidelines that the VLA set, and we're good to go. And I think that teams are starting to take to that a little bit better. What you're going to see in this isn't the full schedule that we have on display right here, but there's a handful of tournaments that are coming up, which are big tournaments for tier 2 teams, tier 1 teams as well. But then there's also a handful of money tournaments, like West Coast Brigade is putting on a huge tournament in over April 13th through the 15th in Southern California with $15,000 in prize money. It's things like that we were hoping for, that teams would, hey, let's make these tournaments about the league and make them fun. And so what's going to happen is we're going to start seeing a lot more teams just understand that, hey, we can get together and play volleyball. And that's what the VLA is all about, is creating opportunities to play volleyball, play high level volleyball, professional level volleyball, and just build something great.
Yeah, we want to give everybody the opportunity, but also give everybody the power to create their own volleyball. You want to schedule a tournament if you have the means and the facilities and all, and the organization, all that. Throw a tournament. Awesome. We want it under the VLA umbrella. We want everybody.
Awesome volleyball, Sam Albus. He just messaged me about that an hour ago.
Oh, about what volleyball you got to play with?
Yeah, well, no, he's like, hey, you send me some volleyballs.
Yeah, that would certainly help. Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome to see these tier 2 teams start to take initiative and put great events together that are worth VLA points and just helps further the VLA brand. And teams that, even like random adult teams that aren't VLA teams, go to these tournaments and they have an awesome time. Like the Milwaukee one was a big deal here in the Midwest. That dominated the Midwestern volleyball community that weekend, and it was an awesome event. So that's exactly the point. We want everybody to be able to do this, and we want to reward them with points for producing events and getting teams to the same spot and producing good matches. So it's all great stuff. We love the progress that this format has kind of taken on. And for the tier 2 teams that are really chasing after every little point, they're going to need to continue to take advantage of this system.
Yeah, and ultimately we're looking to try to implement we want the entire country involved with the VLA. We don't want this to be an exclusive group where it's, oh, you're VLA, or, there's this and you're here type of attitude. We want it to be where everyone can be involved with this. Obviously, we're throwing points as incentive and things like that where, tier 2 teams, we're trying to help other teams attract better teams to get there and play and make it a more valuable tournament. Obviously, with ECV, Cleveland Kong, I don't think would have traveled to Milwaukee if points weren't on the line. You know what I mean? If it was just hey, come play this tournament, I don't think they would have gone up there. But the fact that, hey, there's X amount of points that we can go earn in our quest to make it to tier 1, yeah, they will go. But that doesn't say, hey, we don't want all the local teams to play too. So just the fact that it's open to everybody, we want anyone that wants to be a part of the league to be involved. And also what that does is some of these teams where players may not be recognized yet by some of these tier 2 teams or even tier 1 teams. It's like, hey, they may see a guy playing on X rec team and say, hey, that guy could help us.
Oh yeah,
Maybe an
totally.
introduction to, hey, another guy can get picked up this way and make his way onto the VLA circuit to where he's got the opportunity to play. So it's all about exposure and getting involved and making sure that we're hitting every pocket of the country, because that's our goal, is to try to open it up to everybody.
Yep, it's a very, very inclusive model, and it weaves in perfectly with the competitive structure of awarding points and getting promoted to tier 1 and all that. It's great. I love teams taking advantage of it, and it's produced some good volleyball already, just as a nice little appetizer to the main season starting in a couple months. So, Vince, last but not least, there's one thing that the VLA announced a couple weeks ago that I wanted to hit and get some feedback from you about before we end the show. And produce, don't worry, there will be plenty more around the VLA leading up to the season and during the season. But we announced this, Vince. We announced the introduction of the VLA women's division coming in 2023. This is a very big deal, and it's something that we've wanted to do since the beginning. We're finally able to pull it off. That there will be VLA women's volleyball played in 2023, and the details aren't all set yet. We can't tell you everything, but Vince, what can we tell everybody about women's volleyball under the VLA umbrella?
So basically what I just said about the inclusiveness of the entire country is exactly what we're trying to do with the women's side, right? Obviously we have to start, we started with what we are good at. We knew that we had a successful model or potential for model of the men's side with, starting with our 5 teams and then expanding from there. And it's just been continual growth. The next step obviously is the women's. We want to do the exact same thing with the women's. We want to open it up to where we are, giving the possibility for women's teams to create themselves the same way we've done with the men's and grow and integrate into the VLA. The VLA is an umbrella platform that we are trying to hold everyone kind of under a certain model, a professional level model that is we're trying to implement throughout the entire country. So with the women's, it's just organic that we are going to progress in this direction. We will be following the exact same structure, the exact same model that we are doing with the men's. Nothing's going to be changed. It's going to be almost entirely equal. It's up for the women's teams, team reps, players, everyone involved with women's to basically put into the VLA the same way the men's have done. The men's have done a great job of building this entire, league organization. This model has been successful because of what, because the people believe in it. If it wasn't something that people understood and believed in, it wouldn't be happening. Well, now we got the women's division, and we're going to open it up the exact same way to where, hey, it can grow as big as you want it to. And so hopefully the women's team reps and teams and clubs and everyone involved or that wants to be involved does become involved, and we grow from there. And I'm really excited to see where the women's division can take off, because obviously it's, it's volleyball. Women's just seems to make sense, right?
Yeah, well, I'd say that women's and girls volleyball in the United States is a little bit of a big deal. I think there's a decent market
Probably
there that
the biggest sport in the country.
maybe a little bit. And it's only right that we give an opportunity for women's teams to play. So stay tuned. If you're a female volleyball player and you're interested in playing VLA, stay tuned. We'll have a lot more info coming out about this in the next several months as we lead up to the point at which we'll actually have women's volleyball on the court for the VLA. But it's great that we can announce this. There will be VLA women's volleyball played in 2023. Much more details coming soon. So, Mr. Zanzuki, anything else? Anything else we want to leave the people with? Because it's almost Thanksgiving. We'll take a couple weeks off, and we'll come back with a much bigger preview show for the entire season. But I think this was a really good way to get back into Around the VLA. I miss this show. I miss talking to you on Wednesday nights. It's great.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things. I mean, we've got a lot of stuff coming up. Huge tier 1 season coming up. We have an amazing cup season coming up with what we did last year. Last year was extremely successful. We're just looking to build on top of that, and everything that we've done so far, the VLA has done so far, has just continued that consistent growth, and we're very excited about where this is going. So stay tuned. We got a couple of big tier 2 events coming up within the next couple of weeks, actually, and then obviously tier 1 starts in January 14th in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and that's going to be a very, very exciting tournament, or very exciting set of matches, and we're just excited to bring this 2023 season to everyone.
Yep, and you're in the right place to follow along with it all here on YouTube, where you can find all the matches and future live streams of this very show. And check us out on Instagram at VLA Volleyball, the website volleyballleagueofamerica.com, and just anywhere else on the internet you find things. The VLA is there. So stay tuned to all those platforms. We'll have a lot more coming soon as we lead up to the season. But for now, have a great rest of your Wednesday night. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.